It's so important. We cannot just skip this. I would want to go back, still on the teacher motivation bit and the teaching allowance that Dr. Adutwum raises here, that it's 1,500 for a year. Obviously, that is not the best of situations. But I think, yes, reading up, I saw a statement by the minister which indicated that it was increased from, I think, 500 CDs to 1,005. So obviously, 500 CDs compared to 1,005, definitely that would be really bad. How do we get this situation rectified so that at least we get to a position where it is satisfactory? At the very minimum, we get something that is wholesome, if you like.
I mean, in this analysis, we all know it's important to look at the purchasing power, to look at, the real time of value of money. At the time, it was 500, and then when it's
when it was 500,
when
it was
it's been increased now. Yes, we'll have to do the
honorable,
analysis.
really. Wouldn't that be an overstretch? Seriously?
No, it's not. It's not. I mean, if you look at the fact that there's the first time in 4 years that they are increasing it. I mean,
but from 500 to 1,500 in 4 years.
In 4 years.
Come on. So 300%.
Let's just agree. I think we should agree that it's woefully inadequate and we should do something about it. But to justify that,
he's saying
no. I'm not justifying. Sure. I'm saying that. I mean, we need to put the analysis in context.
Very well.
I mean, look, teachers deserve everything you can throw at them. There's no doubt about that. But of course, you work within constraints of resources. If you look at the public sector of our country, teachers, if you add the education and health sector, 60% of the entire wage bill. So finance ministers will always tell you when we sit with them to negotiate for better conditions of service for our teachers. They will always tell you about the constraints,
sure.
Because mind you, we also want to increase the numbers, make sure that the trained teacher to people ratio improves. It's been improving over the years, but we need to do better. So you want to bring in more, you want to retain them, but you also must make sure that you look at the public purse. So right. Yes, I'll commend the new government for increasing that. But we should find other ways. And I was making that point earlier, that the teaching environment, the provision of laptops, for example, give them all the tools they need, textbooks, teaching and learning materials. Make that available. I do not think that teachers are only interested in monetary, reward. But if we can give them the tools they need to work, they will at least appreciate the good effort.
Right.
Now, there are a number of things that have come up that I need to respond to very quickly. My brother loves double track so much. But you see, this country moved away from the shift system at the basic level. Double track is simply just another shift system. We set the shift system, and really, it was jeopardizing quality. It led to truancy. Pupils at the basic level, you meet them in the morning, they tell you, I'm in the afternoon shift. You meet them in the afternoon, I was in the morning shift. It was such a terrible situation that we worked under President Mahama's era with my boss, Professor Nana Jenopokwajima. We were able to eliminate the shift system. We all jubilated, we celebrated. And I must commend Dr. Akufo-Addo with his Millennium Schools, beautiful schools. Because Greater Accra was the real, hub for this shift system. What has happened to us? That now, something that we all jettisoned, abandoned, worked hard to eliminate is back at the second cycle level with a different name as double track, and we are being told to applaud it. If it is so good, why are you yourself, the president, the minister, the deputy minister have set time with that number that, give us September. It keeps shifting though. Then they say, okay, you now 2021 or by 2022 we'll do away with it.
But
it is clear. It is clear.
It's allowing. Honorable, just a minute. And the argument then is that it is allowing children who otherwise would have missed out on senior high school education to have that opportunity. Isn't that good enough?
Look, we have made the point.
No,
we have made the point. We have made the point that, look, there is a very recent example, and we should be guided by history and best practice. When Professor Mills became president, 2009, he knew that September, later down the lane, the two cohorts Remember, President Akufo had increased the SHS duration from 3 years to 4 years. So the 2 cohorts will have to be accommodated, because the 3rd years will stay in school, remain in school for 4th year, and you need to admit 1st years. Those numbers were far higher than the 400,000. We are talking about an excess of 500,000 at the time, 540,000. President Mills rolled out an emergency construction of dormitories and classrooms, and he was able to contain the numbers. So I tell you that the double track is a lazy man's approach. You came into power in January.
200,
you came into power in January. The academic year, you came into power in January.
Are those the 200 community day schools?
No, Professor Mills, okay. No, Professor Mills' emergency intervention was different. No, please, if I can, when you are on, I allow you. Now, you came into power January 7, 2017, sworn in. You know you are going to implement free SHSs in your manifesto. Anytime we've introduced social interventions, right from capitation grant to school feeding to free standards, it increases the numbers. You know that numbers will go up. You have inherited community day schools, 125, which are being constructed. What do? Between January and September, learning from the Professor Mills example, you could have completed those schools. That's why we were doing progressively free, building the schools, and then taking care of the poorest of the poor, because you are keeping an eye on quality. Now you have a situation where you abandon the schools, just sat aloof, then September comes, you are exposed, there's congestion, parents are angry, students are complaining, then you come up with double track. Double track is an afterthought. It's because of poor planning. It's because of poor planning. It's because of poor planning. It's because of the poor planning. If you allow me, it's not about interjecting as well. When you are speaking, I allow you. So when you have a situation of poor implementation, poor planning, and you certainly are going to be forced to introduce a shift system.
Very well. Honorable, I think you made your point. Yes.
I'll respond to the other.
This definitely incites passion, as we can see now.
I think this is what I say all the time when I hear his presidential candidate and former president talking about education. They don't get it. Everything that you're saying here does not make sense based on education, research, and practice. I don't fault you. We all have different experiences. But one thing I'll tell you is this. When I'm sitting in a town called Ntefufo, and for the first time my child has had the opportunity to go to secondary school, and you are saying it was a lazy man's approach that enabled the son of Opening Kojo Mensah to go to Achimota. That's the lazy man's approach. The poor people of this country are listening to us. And sometimes they don't seem to get us. We are privileged, and we think everybody is privileged just like us. When you have a strategy that has been used around the world, and of course the President of the Republic said that within 5 to 7 years, I will eliminate it because it put too much pressure on headmasters who have to supervise students year-round, matrons who have to work year-round. And says, I'm going to do it. And by the way, for the first time in the history of this country, you were in Parliament. When we came there and was able to use Get Fund securitization to get $1.5 billion approved by Parliament to embark upon our infrastructure. You talk about community senior high school. I'll tell you this. It's a shame when we begin talking about 200 schools without a budget. The only ones we had a budget for was 23 from the Secondary Education Improvement Project loan from the World Bank. I've always been on record by saying that building community schools are not a bad thing. I cite the example of Dobi Kwabinya, Frafraha, Agrek Nzima in Kumasi. Good locations, excellent idea, middle of the city, children can walk or take trotro and get there. You put a community senior high school in Saura in the western north region. I was there 2 months ago to break ground so that we can add a dormitory because the kids are walking 5 miles from their villages to Nsaura. Is that how you do community schools? When you put a community school as Drobonson instead of a boarding school and the school cannot open, then you go around to blame us for not opening schools that cannot be opened. You talk about why don't you complete? Did you leave a budget? Apart from the 23 schools from SIF, there was no budget for the schools that you started. No budget whatsoever. So it's not a question of you came, you saw it. If it was so easy, why didn't you do it during your term? Why didn't you complete the schools during your term so that we won't have any problem? You finished 29 schools. That is what is on record. Yes,
50.
I have the list.
You're wrong.
I have the list of schools. I can call it out.
According to the
Your
handover
minister-
notes,
The handover
Your
notes have no
46.
basis.
46.
It says
No,
46.
it says 46, but when you go to the people who supervise it, the civil works team, these are not politicians, they are architects and building technologists who supervise the construction. I have the names of the schools. What may have happened is when they were rushing to commission schools that were not completed. The schools that were completed were 29, and I have
How
the
many
list.
have you done?
How many have
How
you
many-
done?
how many have you
Of
done?
course,
I think-
we've
How
added.
many have you done?
No, that's
Let
fine.
me tell you, not about what we've done. We've
Okay,
completed
for
a
the
number
sake
of
of
your
argument,
schools.
29. How
I
many
have
have you
it.
done?
I have 26 done, completed the last 2 years. We are not counting 2020. And then, in addition to that, go to KSTS in Kumasi. When you talk about how many have we done, how many new Cs have we created? MPP is of the opinion that if a school